Hello, I'm Allan Bonner and welcome to At Issue. For nearly 1 billion years, ozone molecules in the atmosphere have helped keep life on this planet safe. The ozone layer is like a protective shield for the Earth. But over the past 50 years, humans have placed the ozone layer and ourselves in serious jeopardy. Gentlemen, we're fortunate to have you with us. Thank you very much. I want to provide you both with an opportunity. You might think it's a small demotion. Let's say you're a page makeup person at a big city newspaper. What do you want above the fold in the newspaper about this topic? What is the most important stuff? Not in the jump on page 17, but the front page, Ian.
I guess the most important thing is recovery of the ozone problem. And I think we're going to talk about, people know that there was a problem in depletion of ozone, and there were some actions taken, and it looks like we're on a recovery, and it's a credit to the people who organised it.
Some good environmental news for a change.
Not completely good yet, but it's good news.
Ted.
And the other thing is it's going to take a long time. It's going to take about 50 years for the ozone layer to recover, and there's going to be a lot of other factors that will confound things. So it may be that the ozone hole gets worse for 5 years before it gets better. So we have to understand how all these different factors, natural variations and so on, affect ozone. So it'll be a long haul, but we're on the right way.
Let's skip forward to what does it do for us? Why do we need to be concerned about it? How does it help us? I said at the beginning of the program it was kind of like a shield. Would you amplify that non-scientific language?
That's exactly what it is, and in fact if there wasn't ozone in the stratosphere we wouldn't be here today to discuss it. The sun emits radiation at all sorts of wavelengths or colours. Of course our eyes are only sensitive between typical rainbow spectrum from the blue to the red, but at shorter wavelengths the sun emits much more harmful radiation. And that radiation is absorbed, just as I mentioned that you can measure ozone by taking advantage of the fact that at some wavelengths it absorbs radiation when other gases don't. The important thing about ozone is it absorbs radiation extremely strongly at wavelengths which are very damaging to DNA and life.
Okay, worst case scenario, increased skin cancer?
Increased skin cancer, on the human side, increased skin cancer, cataracts, etc., but also damage in terms of crops and agriculture.
All right, we're still in the 1970s. We're becoming aware of this problem. Tackle, if you will, what we did about it, because I think this is an interesting and positive success story about multilateral cooperation. Take me to Vienna. What happened there?
Well, I guess the story in the 70s, as we all, those of us who were teenagers or older then remember, there were lots of warnings about spray cans and so on, and ozone-friendly materials, and so there was actually a lot of public action, and people looked for alternatives. People wanted to avoid aerosols. So that's an important lesson, that before there was any regulation, there was actually a lot of controls that were voluntary. And then, but there were a few controls as well within Canada and Scandinavia and the U.S. Late 70s, I guess. And then there was increasing concern through the early 80s, building up to a meeting in about 1985, which was to look at ozone depletion. But just at that time was the discovery of the ozone hole, and that in 85, and that really accelerated things. And then that led to very quickly to the Montreal Protocol, because people realized that this was actually something that was potentially out of control, and that was not at all anticipated. It was a total surprise.
If you were to draw the graph with your hand, it's evened out the amount of ozone depletion, or it's only going down a couple of percentage points a year?
It's sort of gone down like this, and then just after 87, when we started taking action, it took a few years, and the evidence is that it's just coming up.
Starting to come
but it's
back.
Only at, of course, we never know if it's going to come back and then drop down again. But it's,
gentlemen, you got me in such a positive mood about what has happened since the Montreal Protocol. I've got to think, well, maybe, maybe this isn't all sweetness and light. There's got to be some problem buried in here somewhere. I'm thinking of the safety of the elements that replaced chlorofluorocarbons as a propellant in deodorant and fire extinguishers and what have you. So, are they safe?
Well, there are some issues there. I think, for example, one of the compounds which is controlled now is methyl bromide, which was added late because it was more complicated one to analyze. But that's a very important fumigant and pesticide. And it is actually itself dangerous, one of the few that are, but the substitutes that are being proposed are quite dangerous. And so I was actually at a meeting, one of these meetings of the parties, the governments that negotiated, who were representing the scientific assessment, and there was a protest by the United Farm Workers who were saying, don't get rid of methyl bromide because the substitutes are killing us. So there are those kinds of issues. The other thing is that there are some of the substitutes which don't deplete ozone but are very long-lived greenhouse gases. Perfluorocarbons are one, for example. And those are not dangerous to health, but they would be very dangerous for climate. So there's also that sort of
So what's
danger.
the answer? What do you say to the farmers?
Well, that would be, I think that's something where the governments have to decide what a tolerable level of risk is. And I think the feeling is that the ozone layer is, to some extent, is under control. At least ozone depletion is under control enough that it is okay to pull back on the brake a little bit for certain things.
So this takes us into the other environmental dictum, and that is there's no free lunch. The farmers that you cite are saying the substitute for this is more dangerous to us personally than the ozone layer up in the stratosphere, and they might rightly say, why don't you wear a hat? Why don't you wear sunglasses? Why don't you wear sunscreen and not have this one segment of society so exposed and bearing most of the risk? What do you say to them?
Well, as we mentioned, the threat from the increased UV is also to agriculture. So the farmers are not just concerned about other people's skin cancer, but they're concerned about their own agricultural yields.
All right, so they might not get to be farmers in the next generation if we destroy the crops. Now, people of goodwill at home watch a program like this and say, okay, they've convinced me, time to do my bit. I'm thinking of my own fire extinguishers at home, or, we don't have the aerosol cans anymore. Is there anything the average person can do to do his or her bit?
There are a couple of things which would be important. For example, a lot of the sources, lots of these things are used as refrigerants in air conditioning systems, kitchen fridges, car air conditioners. And there are strict controls now on how these old fridges and cooling devices, which are stocked with the harmful ones, are to be destroyed. And of course, destroying things under close supervision usually costs more than getting a guy next door with a truck to take and dump it somewhere. So one of the major concerns is that people are not, all of these old air conditioners, etc., are not being modified or destroyed or removed in a safe manner. For example, I had a problem with my own air conditioner at home the other.
And they're energy guzzlers too, so we should get rid of them.
as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm Allan Bonner.